The late Victorian period spanning from 1870 to 1901 marked the twilight of an age once filled with moral certainty, progress, and optimism. As the 19th century drew to a close, the confident glow of the Victorian world began to dim, revealing beneath its surface a deep sense of doubt, disillusionment, and change. First, let's discuss the spirit of the late Victorian age. This was a time when industrial growth and imperial expansion reached their peak, yet so did social unrest, class division, and moral anxiety. Science, once a symbol of progress, began to shake faith itself. With Darwin's theory of evolution, traditional religious beliefs were challenged, leading to what many called the crisis of faith. Writers and thinkers no longer saw the world as certain or neatly ordered. Instead, they began to question everything that the Victorians once held sacred. Now let's discuss themes and tone of the late Victorian period. Late Victorian literature turned introspective and dark. It spoke of loss of faith, social hypocrisy, isolation, and inner conflict. Writers explored the psychological depth of characters and the moral complexity of human life. The tone shifted from moral assurance to melancholy realism and existential questioning. Now let's discuss the major writers and works. Thomas Hardy. Hardy's novels, such as Tess of the D'Urbervilles and Jude the Obscure, portray individuals struggling against fate, society, and indifferent nature. His tragic realism reflected the loss of hope in divine order. Man stood alone in a universe without moral guarantees. Oscar Wilde. A master of wit and aesthetic brilliance, Wilde celebrated art for art's sake. In works like The Picture of Dorian Gray and The Importance of Being Earnest, he exposed the double standards and moral pretensions of Victorian society, blending irony with beauty and rebellion. Gerard Manley Hopkins. Hopkins' poetry, though deeply spiritual, struggled with inner doubt and divine silence. His innovative style, sprung rhythm, and vivid imagery would later inspire modern poets seeking new forms of expression. A.E. Housman and George Gissing. Both captured the quiet despair of ordinary lives, the loneliness, alienation, and fading hopes that came to define the fin de siècle, the end of the century, mood. Now let's discuss the fin de siècle mood, end of the century. The French phrase fin de siècle perfectly captures the spirit of exhaustion and transition that defined this age. While science and progress promised a bright future, art and literature felt a growing weariness, as if civilization had reached its peak and was now drifting into decline. It was an age of decadence, aestheticism, and symbolism, where artists began to value beauty, art, and emotion over moral duty. The Victorians' moral universe was fading, and modern uncertainty was taking its first breath. Now let's take a glimpse toward modernism. As Queen Victoria's reign ended in 1901, so too did the era of certainty. The coming century would bring war, fragmentation, and radical experimentation in thought and art. Writers like Joseph Conrad and W.B. Yeats, emerging at this threshold, began to question not just society, but language, meaning, and reality itself. Thus, the late Victorian age stands as both an ending and a beginning, where the grand ideals of faith, morality, and order dissolved into the dawn of modernism, an age that dared to redefine what it meant to be human. The lamps are going out all over Europe. We shall not see them lit again in our lifetime. A line that, though written later, captures perfectly the fading light of the Victorian spirit. Follow us on Instagram. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share,